Right. What do we think of blind auctions?
I think they're a fantastic idea. It's the best way. If you want to do a race to the bottom, there's no better way to do it. Coming up, US senators start taking an interest in ad fraud.
Publicis re-establishes strategic relationships with Walmart.
And we look at the dreaded e-auction. Hello and welcome to IDCOM's MediaSnack, episode 34. Today, interesting news coming out of the US. A couple of US senators are starting to take an interest in ad fraud.
Yes. We hear that Publicis and Walmart have established a strategic relationship.
Yeah. And finally, we'll look at one of the bugbears of media agencies is having to go through e-auctions as part of the pitching process. And we'll discuss the pros and cons of that. All coming up in today's Media Snack in just the time it takes to eat a sandwich. Right, first up this week, quite a big story actually that's come out of the US. Two US senators have written a letter to the FTC, which is the Federal Trade Commission.
That's right.
And they've written a list of questions of the FTC, asking them about the threat of ad fraud and the impact that that could have on the advertising industry, but most importantly, I think, onto consumers.
That's right. Yeah. So in the US, online advertising is a $60 billion business. Estimates have it that 10% of that, so around $7 billion, is actually siphoned off.
That's good maths.
Yeah, thank you. Is siphoned off through ad fraud. So it's a massive, massive issue, not just for the industry, but also it's a massive lump of change. And I think this is probably what's raised the heckles of the senators.
Yeah, and it's something that we've been perhaps anticipating might eventually happen at some point, given the concerns over a lot of practice in advertising, and the sheer numbers involved. At some point, politics is going to maybe find this an interesting thing to start championing. And I think that one of the biggest concerns that they raise, and now the FBI are getting involved, is that the prediction is that within 10 years, ad fraud will be the second largest funder of organised crime in the US, behind drug trafficking. So we're, as an industry, we're really kind of up there in terms of integrity and credibility. That's obviously a massive concern. Politicians have got involved. Of course, there's a heightened political focus in the US at the moment. This, I'm sure, would be a good story to tell. If they can start to draw parallels between some of the world's largest advertisers and how they may be funding organised crime, that plays out, you'd imagine, incredibly well.
And so, but it's also a parallel with the financial market. So the last time that they got heavily involved in an issue similar to this was in the regulations of the financial marketplace, and look what happened there. So essentially, they are putting a spotlight on the industry to up their game and address this massive issue.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what do you think will be the reaction of the marketing community?
Well, the first thing is that the senators have written a letter to the FTC, and they're challenging the FTC to start making some investigation. And this is on ad fraud. I guess it's only a matter of time before a senator or someone at the FTC reads also the A&A rebate report and maybe starts to draw some parallels with these things. And so that's probably pretty bad news, I suppose, for the agencies. Not that they're necessarily doing anything wrong, but it's an additional focus. From a marketer's perspective, there's a brilliant piece of wording in the letter that the senators sent to the FTC, which is where they say that marketers should focus on events, i.e. outcomes of their investments in advertising, which cannot be fulfilled by robots, which is such a nice way of putting it. It's a lovely external perspective of our industry. Why are we chasing metrics as an industry which can be fulfilled by fraud? Why aren't we focusing on metrics which require a human action, not a bot action? And actually, that's such a simple way of looking at it. So, why are marketers not setting better KPIs for digital advertising? Why are agencies, who are supposed to be guardians of that investment, not helping them set KPIs to optimize, at the very least, human action and minimize robot action.
Yeah.
But it seems to be going the other way.
That's right.
So why, that's something which perhaps additional FTC focus on this might help us understand and put pressure, I think, in the right places, right? It's going to put pressure on the advertising community to account for the $7 billion that's finding its way into organised crime.
Absolutely.
It's a serious issue.
It's a big issue, and I think if anything, that this will prevent the community, the industry, the advertising community from ignoring this issue any further.
Yeah.
They are going to have to address it. They're going to have to confront this issue. It's not just going to be the responsibility of publishers or agencies. It'll have to be a collective responsibility, and this won't go away until the issue is resolved.
Yeah, I agree.
So next up, Walmart, the massive US retailer, has forged a strategic relationship with Publicis Group.
Yep.
Okay, so they've had a long-standing relationship with Saatchi & Saatchi and the Martin Agency. Now, on the back of this news, the Martin Agency have lost all creative scope, and all of that has now been given to Publicis, their creative agencies. So, a re-establishment of a very deep, long-standing kind of relationship. What I think makes it newsworthy is that actually Publicis lost the media for Walmart at the end of last year as part of the kind of Mediapalooza piece. Do we know where that actually
No, I still don't think we know where that ended up.
No.
We'll make an appeal, actually. If anybody knows what Walmart may have misplaced their $1 billion media account, nobody seems to know quite where it's gone. So if you know where that is, please let us know and we'll pass on the information. But we don't know, it's some recompense for Publicis having, we think, MediaVest have lost the $1 billion worth of media billings, but have gained a lot of this new creative scope. Of course, Publicis are saying this is a great validation, right, of their new positioning, which we've discussed at length. I think perhaps it is to some degree. I don't think they can say that this is necessarily a total proof. Because it's one client, and
a big one,
albeit a very big one, with that endorsement. And we'll wait to see. Hopefully, Publicis can make that profitable. That will be the real validation. And secondly, more importantly, that it drives a client's business success. That will be the actual validation. But I think it creates an interesting dynamic. It could be the indication of a trend. I mean, those are some of the questions that we've been asked. Is this a trend of advertisers seeking to bring all of their different agency requirements into one group? And I think the Publicis structure was really aimed at trying to do that. And I think what they did, we discussed before, what they did which was very, very smart, I think, was to go out with a very clear message of being customer-focused, advertiser-focused, and to structure around service to those clients, which I think historically might have been missing from the group propositions, where you had very broad menu of services that maybe couldn't collaborate. So if Publicis can bring this together with a good service proposition, this could be the beginning or a good validation of this more agile group structures where these deep resources that they have can be better mobilized around a particular client's requirement.
And I think, from a marketing perspective, or from Walmart's perspective, I think it makes a lot of sense. I'd imagine, given that they're a retailer that has a complex arrangements of kind of service providers, being able to manage their vendors, if you like, their portfolio of kind of communication suppliers simply within one holding group that has a clear management structure and authority makes a lot of sense. And obviously they've got a lot of trust, they have a legacy relationship with Publicis, and they've convinced them that this new structure is gonna pay dividends and is gonna generate a smoother way of working for them, and it makes a lot of sense. The implications on media at this stage we're not quite sure, but from a creative perspective, I think it makes a lot of sense.
It does. And we hear a lot, I mean, a frequent moan of very senior marketers is that they don't get enough time to grow their brands because they spend far too much time trying to manage a complex agency roster. We hear it again and again and again, and if only that was easier. And the response typically from agencies is, we need to find better ways of collaborating. You go to any conference, there's always a session on how do agencies collaborate better, and it becomes a bit kind of predictable. If anything, this starts to say, actually, what, marketers are not necessarily looking for collaboration necessarily. If agencies are smart, then they can take all the scope and make it work internally.
Because they're looking for ease of management, I think, in a lot of cases, to allow them to do their day jobs.
Exactly. The proof will be in the client results ultimately. Okay, finally today, e-auctions.
Oof, yes.
You like e-auctions?
I love e-auctions.
Love e-auctions. So just in case you're not aware, an e-auction is typically a piece of software that a buyer may use to evaluate supplier submissions, typically, which is perfectly sensible, to try and find balanced cost and quality. So if you're buying a commodity, you might ask suppliers to put in their best prices versus different products of quality and things like that. And then you pick a supplier. And there are a number of systems. A lot of large companies around the world use these for managing all their external suppliers. The reason that it's interesting, and the reason that we want to talk about it today, is because over the years they've become increasingly a part of media agency pitches.
That's right.
And some of the ones that we've worked on have included these kind of technologies, and we've worked with clients that use these technologies, I should say, not necessarily on our recommendation, I might add. But what's the impact? It's kind of got the news kind of buzzing again.
So Steve Allen, who is the chief executive of MediaCom, has been very vocal about an e-auction process that was conducted for the recent VW review, where they were unsuccessful. Yeah,
because they were the massive incumbent, and they lost this $2 billion
huge
billings loss to them.
And the criticism was that a big proportion of the weighting of that decision was down to the costs that were generated through this kind of e-auction system. And it happens in a lot of reviews. A lot of large organisations have to be compliant through some form of e-sourcing mechanic. That's not unusual. And as more and more reviews are managed through procurement departments, they use these systems, like mTaurus is a relatively well-known one, to facilitate the investment exercise part of a review. Now, the problem with that is that it encourages a race to the bottom. So
particularly where it's blind as well. And I think that was Steve's criticism, where you can't see where you're aiming at, and you're just asked to go lower and lower. And the experience that we've had sometimes on the other side of those is you get either some traffic light system that tells you that you're off, and you have to just keep going down, down, down until it goes green.
Or it tells you where you rank, even worse. So you are, perhaps there are 4 agencies participating in this review, you put your figure in, you come first, and then within seconds you're 4th again. So then you are challenged to provide a different price in order to improve your ranking within the auction. And that obviously facilitates a race to the bottom. And that's the greatest sort of challenge, and that's the greatest concern. And we do everything we can to discourage or dissuade clients that we work with throughout this process, throughout pitch processes, to use an e-auction. There are far better, more effective ways, I think, of establishing a competitive trading position than using a system
and
like
that's
that.
the fundamental. The ambition from a marketer perspective, when you talk about media spend, should be, your aspiration should be to reach a competitive cost position. The challenge with the approach, particularly using an e-auction system, is that it treats media like a commodity that can be bought cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Now, if you're buying a raw material, let's just say you're buying aluminium to put on in drinks cans, or you're buying paper for packaging, or some raw materials, then typically you're buying that from the supplier of those commodities. So from an aluminium supplier or paper supplier, whoever it is. And they will know their baseline costs. They will know where their margins sit, and they will know how low they can go. And then it's up to them to make the decision of how low they want to get on the price. And that's perfectly good diligence from a procurement organisation to say, based on a quality spec, this we want to pay the lowest price, and so we'll have people tender for that. It makes complete sense. The difficulty of media is it's an intangible commodity. So it doesn't actually exist. So you don't, and in many countries in the world, you don't know what the price is of something till it has appeared, or that it's broadcast, or it's issued. And secondly, agencies don't own that commodity. Some examples they do, but we'll come to those in a minute. But generally, agencies, they don't own it. They are acting as agents. They are part of the procurement process. So that's why it's slightly strange putting media agencies in a blind auction, because they're having to commit ever lower and lower and lower prices for something of which they do not control.
So it's a gamble.
And they don't know that, and they don't necessarily, or not supposed to, make a margin on that inventory. So all they're doing is representing what they think they can buy it for, which is really a gamble. It's just gambling. And for the agencies that race to the bottom, they are staking millions or hundreds of millions of dollars sometimes on a complete gamble.
Yeah.
And that
which they've been forced to take, in fairness.
Yeah, they have no option, because they're being told by this system and by those processes, this is the only way that you can win Volkswagen's business, for example, is if you're the cheapest. Yeah. And agencies are having to commit themselves to be the cheapest on something that they don't know the price of, which is risky, you could say, always reckless in some examples. And the impact of that is that a client might walk away and say, wow, we've got amazing commitment on cost savings, we've got a hugely cheap media, but then the agency on the back end, having won that piece of business, having frankly gambled in this system, completely blind often, then are held to account for delivery. Yeah. And that's where time and time again, then it goes off the rails, because the agency have to do nothing but deliver the discounts. Yeah. And so all the resources of the agency are focused on trying to somehow deliver a deal which they have committed themselves to without really knowing how to deliver it.
And then it compromises neutrality of thinking and quality and all of the things that we're talking about. Absolutely. But I hold, not responsible, but I there is some accountability for this on the shoulders of the auditing community, the community, the industry that designs and facilitates the exercises themselves. Yeah. I think that they are, it is beholden on those lead kind of stakeholders to make it very clear to clients when these prices are going below a reasonable watermark. Yeah. When agencies, in order to kind of chase success in these auctions, are going to truly exceptional places where the auditors perhaps, don't believe that the pricing can be delivered. Yeah. They should then hold their hands up and make that very clear to the clients.
Yeah, not encourage ever cheaper and cheaper, and not keep adding like rounds of negotiation where
to further squeeze it. I mean, because it only encourages, agencies to take their pricing to places that, frankly speaking, they won't be able to deliver on in many cases. Yeah. And it just further compounds the issues that we've got around, trust and transparency.
Yeah. And you can't be, I don't know if anyone's ever proven this, but I think you cannot be ever in a race to the top as a marketer, wanting to grow your brands and beat your competition, and at the same time be on a race to the bottom. No. You have to, as a marketer, you have to, and as an organisation, you have to decide: do we want to grow our business? Is media this kind of an investment and a lever for growth? In which case, we don't want to buy the cheapest possible commoditized media. What we want to do is buy the right media that does the right thing, drives an outcome, and we want to pay the right and a fair price. And that's the auditor's responsibility, to help understand what the fair price is for that media inventory based on what the client's trying to do. And it comes all the way back to something that we obsess about, which is this equilibrium, right? And we see it in some bad pitches, we see this in general practice sometimes of media management, is that the over-reliance on cost and discount being the indicator of success in media.
Yeah.
That if you can buy cheaper, that's a win somehow, is completely out of kilter when there's no strategy, insight, or planning. So you don't actually know whether you're buying the right thing. You're just buying a ton of stuff cheaper.
Yeah.
That's not a strategy for success. That's not a race to the top. That's a race to the bottom.
Absolutely.
These things have to be in better equilibrium. And so, when we run pitches, obviously, as you know, the strategic and the service elements from the review have to be considered very holistically with the commercial side, and then both of them make up the total package and value of the agency that you want to buy. And it's our challenge often, isn't it, to marketers? Don't get seduced by the extreme low cost race to the bottom, unless that's really your strategy. In which case, good luck to that. But you have to find the correct balance.
Absolutely, because that causes more issues than it solves.
Yeah,
for sure.
And auditors alone are so obsessing so much about the reduction in cost and championing the reduction of cost and discount, that I think that they have a duty, we all do, to try and right that balance a bit more.
I agree.
Okay, that's all for this week. Please subscribe to the channel to be updated each week with new content. Bye for now.
Have a good weekend.